The cargo bay of the HFY mining station smelled of rust and recycled air. I kept my forearms close to my body as I moved between the towering containers, my chitinous shell clicking softly against the metal grating beneath my feet. As a junior xenobiologist for the Galactic Council, this was supposed to be a routine inspection of illegal wildlife trafficking. Nothing more than checking manifests and taking samples. I had never seen a human before that day. None of us had. The distress signal had come from the outer rim, near the dead zone where few species dared to venture. A small transport vessel, registry unknown, had crash-landed on asteroid ZK7745. The mining station had picked up the survivors and was holding them in quarantine, as per council regulations. My job was to determine if these new aliens posed any biological threat to the known galaxy. Station Commander Vexoth, a bulky Growlin with scales the color of old copper, led me through the winding corridors. His 3 eyes constantly scanned the area around us, a nervous habit I had noticed during our brief meeting earlier. The creatures are unlike anything in our databases, he rumbled through his translator device. They claim to be from a planet called Earth, somewhere beyond the spiral arm. We've never had contact with their species before. I nodded, making notes on my portable scanner. First contact situations were rare, but not unheard of. The galaxy was vast, and new civilizations were discovered every few cycles. What made this unusual was how far these beings had traveled from any known inhabited systems. How many survivors? I asked, checking my equipment one final time. 5 of them. They've been cooperative, mostly. Strange thing is, they don't seem afraid of us at all. Most new species show some level of fear or aggression when first encountering other alien life. These ones. Vexoth paused, his scales shifting to a darker shade. These ones seem almost excited to meet us. We stopped before a heavy blast door marked with quarantine symbols. Through the small observation window, I could see movement inside. My hearts began beating faster as anticipation mixed with professional curiosity. After 3 years of studying alien biology, I thought I had seen every possible variation of intelligent life the galaxy had to offer. Dr. Kethara, Vexoth said, using my formal title. Before you go in, there's something you should know. These humans, they're different. Not just physically. There's something about them that makes my security teams uncomfortable. They won't say what exactly, but I've noticed it too. I tilted my head, a gesture of curiosity among my people. Different how? The commander's massive shoulders rose in what I recognized as his species equivalent of a shrug. You'll understand when you see them. The blast door cycled open with a soft hiss, and I stepped into the quarantine chamber. The room was sterile white, furnished with basic seating and sleeping arrangements, suitable for unknown physiologies. Environmental controls maintained a standard atmosphere that most carbon-based life forms could tolerate. That's when I saw them. 5 beings stood near the far wall, and my first impression was how remarkably similar they were to each other. Unlike most species I knew, which showed considerable variation in size, coloring, and features, these humans appeared to follow a very consistent template. They were bipedal, roughly 2 meters tall, with pale pinkish skin that seemed almost translucent. Each had a crown of fibrous strands growing from their heads in various colors and lengths, but it was their eyes that stopped me cold. Every intelligent species I had encountered possessed eyes that were clearly adapted for their homeworld's conditions, large and sensitive for low-light environments, compound for detecting movement, or specialized for specific wavelengths. Human eyes were small, set in the front of their faces, and possessed an intensity that made my exoskeleton tingle with unease. When they looked at me, I felt as though they were seeing through my shell, analyzing every detail of my anatomy and behavior. It was the gaze of a predator. But somehow, more than that, there was intelligence there, sharp and calculating, but also something I couldn't immediately identify. One of them stepped forward, and I instinctively took a step back. The movement was smooth and controlled, with none of the hesitation I expected from a species encountering aliens for the first time. This human was taller than the others, with short brown head fibers and wearing what appeared to be a damaged uniform of some kind. "Hello," it said, and my translator immediately parsed the meaning while preserving the original vocal patterns. The sound was unlike anything I had heard before. Most species communicated through variations of clicks, rumbles, or harmonic tones. Human speech consisted of rapid, precise manipulations of airflow that created an almost musical quality. "I'm Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth vessel Aurora. We're grateful for the rescue and understand the need for quarantine procedures." I stood frozen, unable to respond immediately. The casual way this human addressed me, as if speaking to another member of its own species, was completely contrary to every first contact protocol I had studied. Most new civilizations required extensive communication efforts just to establish basic concepts like greeting and identification. I am Dr. Keth Ara, of the Galactic Council Xenobiology Division," I managed to say, fighting to keep my voice steady. "I am here to conduct standard biological assessments." Captain Chen's facial features shifted in what I would later learn was called a smile. The expression involved revealing white bony protrusions that were clearly designed for cutting and tearing. Yet somehow, this display of weaponry was apparently meant to convey friendliness. "Of course, Doctor. We'll cooperate fully with your procedures. Though I should mention, we've already taken the liberty of documenting some of our basic physiological data." She gestured to one of the other humans, who stepped forward holding a small device. "This is Dr. Marcus Webb, our ship's medical officer. He's prepared a preliminary biological profile that might save time." I looked at the device Dr. Webb was offering, a slim, rectangular object that seemed to be some kind of portable computer. The technology appeared remarkably advanced, with an interface that was both complex and elegantly simple. What shocked me most was that they had anticipated the need for such documentation and had taken initiative to prepare it. You created this during your time in quarantine?" I asked. Dr. Webb nodded. Another human gesture I was beginning to recognize. "We figured you'd need baseline information about our species. Basic physiology, known pathogens, atmospheric requirements, that sort of thing. We've also included comparative data from other species we've encountered." My 4 hands trembled slightly as I accepted the device. "Other species? You've had previous contact with alien life?" "Oh yes," Captain Chen replied casually. "We've established diplomatic relations with several civilizations in our local stellar neighborhood. The Andromedans were actually the ones who gave us the star charts that led us to this region of space." The implications of her words hit me like a plasma bolt to the thorax. These humans weren't lost explorers stumbling into known space. They were representatives of an entire interstellar civilization that had been operating beyond our detection range. A civilization advanced enough for interstellar travel and experienced enough in alien contact to have established multiple diplomatic relationships. I activated my recording equipment with shaking hands. "Captain Chen, I need to ask you some questions for the Council records. How long has your species been capable of faster-than-light travel?" "About 200 years, she answered without hesitation. "Though we've made significant improvements to our propulsion systems in the last 50. The Aurora's drive system is actually third-generation human technology. 200 years. Most species took millennia to develop reliable FTL capabilities after first achieving spaceflight. My own people, the Vecti, had required over 3,000 years of technological development before we could travel between star systems safely. And your homeworld," I continued, trying to keep my voice professional. "Earth. Can you describe its basic characteristics?" Captain Chen's expression changed slightly, and I detected what seemed like pride in her vocal patterns. "Earth is a Class M planet, as you might classify it. Oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere. Abundant liquid water. Diverse biosphere. Gravity approximately 9.8 meters per second squared. It's located in what we call the Sol system, about 26,000 light-years from the galactic core." The location she described placed their homeworld in a region we had classified as uninhabitable due to radiation levels and gravitational anomalies. Yet these humans had not only survived there, They had thrived enough to develop advanced civilization and interstellar capabilities. Dr. Webb stepped forward again, his small predator eyes focusing on my recording equipment with obvious interest. "Doctor, if I may ask, what's the standard procedure for first contact situations? We'd like to ensure we're following proper protocols." I found myself staring at him in disbelief. Here was an alien species, encountering galactic civilization for the first time, and they were asking about proper protocols. The level of adaptability and forethought was unlike anything in our xenobiological literature. "Well," I said, struggling to remember my training, "typically there's an extended quarantine period, biological assessment, cultural evaluation, and then gradually increasing levels of contact as safety parameters are established. How long does the process usually take?" asked another human. This one smaller than the others with longer head fibers of a yellow color. "Anywhere from 6 months to several years, depending on the species and their technological level." Captain Chen exchanged glances with her companions, and I noticed they seemed to communicate significant amounts of information through subtle facial expressions and body language. After a moment, she turned back to me. "Dr. Kethara, with respect, I think there might be some time-sensitive factors you should be aware of. Our ship's emergency beacon was activated during the crash. Our government will likely dispatch a search and rescue mission when we fail to report in at our next scheduled checkpoint." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. "How long until this checkpoint?" "Approximately 3 weeks." I felt my exoskeleton begin to lose its rigidity as the implications sank in. A search and rescue mission meant military vessels. Armed military vessels of unknown capability, operated by a species that had somehow developed advanced technology in one of the most hostile regions of the galaxy. "Captain," I said carefully, "what kind of vessels would respond to such a mission?" "Depends on what Fleet Command thinks happened to us, Doctor," Webb answered. "Could be anything from a single scout ship to a full exploration task force. If they suspect hostile action." He trailed off. But the implication was clear. Captain Chen seemed to notice my distress. "Doctor, we should probably discuss this with your station commander and whatever council representatives are available. Earth's policy is to establish peaceful contact whenever possible, but we do take the safety of our people seriously." I activated my emergency communication link with trembling fingers. "Commander Vexoth, please report to the quarantine chamber immediately. And contact the council. Tell them we have a situation that requires immediate attention." As I waited for the commander to arrive, I found myself studying these humans more closely. Despite their calm demeanor, I was beginning to notice details that made my professional instincts scream warnings. Their clothing, while appearing simple, was made from materials I couldn't immediately identify. The fabric seemed to be some kind of advanced synthetic that could adapt to different environmental conditions. Their technology, what little I could observe, appeared to be integrated into their equipment in ways that suggested manufacturing capabilities far beyond what their claimed 2 centuries of spaceflight should allow. The device Dr. Webb had given me was processing power equivalent to our best laboratory computers, yet it was apparently standard equipment for their medical personnel. Most unsettling was their behavior. Every gesture, every word, every response demonstrated a level of tactical thinking that spoke to extensive experience with unknown situations. They weren't afraid because they had no reason to be afraid. These weren't explorers who had accidentally wandered into our space. These were representatives of a civilization that had been quietly expanding through the galaxy, establishing contact with other species, and mapping territories we didn't even know existed. When Commander Vexoth arrived, his 3 eyes immediately fixed on the humans with an expression I had never seen before. It took me several seconds to recognize it as the look of a prey animal that had suddenly realized it was sharing a room with an apex predator. "Doctor," he said quietly, never taking his eyes off the humans, "I've sent word to the council, but it will be days before anyone can get here. What do you recommend?" I looked at Captain Chen, who was watching our exchange with those unsettling predator eyes. She smiled again, showing those cutting teeth. And I realized that the question wasn't what we should do about them. The question was what they were going to do about us. Number My first meeting with a human left me both terrified and amazed. The emergency council session convened in the station's main conference chamber 6 hours after my initial contact report. Through the view screen, I could see representatives from 12 different council species, their various forms of communication creating a chaotic symphony of clicks, harmonics, and translated speech. The humans had been moved to a more comfortable facility, though still under quarantine protocols. Council Speaker Theron, an ancient Altarian whose crystalline form had weathered centuries of diplomatic crises, called for order. Dr. Kethera, present your preliminary findings. I stood before the assembled representatives. My notes scattered across the table in front of me. 3 days of constant observation and testing had left me exhausted and more confused than when I started. Honored counselors, the humans present unprecedented challenges to our understanding of biological and technological development. Their physiology is remarkably efficient, with redundant systems that suggest evolution in an extremely hostile environment. Their technological capabilities appear to exceed their claimed development timeframe by several orders of magnitude. Representative Quintar, a hegemony delegate whose species controlled significant military resources, leaned forward on his mechanical supports. Explain what you mean by exceed their development timeframe, Doctor. I activated the holographic display, showing the scans we had performed on human equipment. Their portable devices contain computational matrices that rival our best planetary scale systems. The materials science involved in their clothing suggests mastery of molecular engineering at a level we achieved only recently. Yet they claim only 2 centuries of space travel. Perhaps they're lying about their development timeline, suggested another representative. Many species exaggerate their achievements during first contact. That was my initial assumption, I replied, pulling up additional data. However, their biological age markers support their claims. Captain Chen shows approximately 35 Earth years of development, which corresponds to early middle age for their species. If humans had been spacefaring for millennia, we would expect to see evidence of genetic modifications or technological augmentation. Instead, they appear to be completely unmodified baseline specimens. The implications hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Species didn't develop advanced technology that quickly without outside intervention or some catastrophic pressure forcing rapid evolution. What about their claimed contact with other civilizations? Speaker Theron's crystalline voice carried harmonics of concern. Have you verified these Andromedans they mentioned? Commander Vexoth, who had been silent until now, activated his own display. We've been scanning long-range communications in the frequencies the humans indicated. There's definitely artificial signal traffic in the regions they specified, but it's too far away to decode properly. What we can detect suggests active civilizations using technologies we don't recognize. The chamber fell silent as the representatives processed this information. If the humans were telling the truth, there was an entire region of space containing multiple advanced civilizations that had somehow escaped council detection. How is that possible? Quintar demanded. Our survey networks extend throughout the galactic arm. How could we miss entire civilizations? I had been asking myself the same question for days. Based on my conversations with Captain Chen, I believe they've been deliberately staying outside our detection range. She mentioned several times that Earth's exploration missions focus on regions with low background radiation and minimal subspace disturbances, areas we've classified as uninhabitable or not worth surveying. You're suggesting they've been hiding from us? Not hiding exactly. More like avoiding contact until they were ready for it. The humans seem to prefer establishing relationships on their own terms rather than being discovered by others. Speaker Theron's form shifted to a deeper blue, indicating deep concern among his people. Doctor, in your professional opinion, do these humans represent a threat to council space? The question I had been dreading. I looked down at my notes, remembering Captain Chen's unsettling smile and the way the humans seemed to analyze everything around them with predatory focus. Honored Speaker, I believe they represent the most significant threat we've ever encountered, precisely because they don't appear threatening. The chamber erupted in confused communications. Representative Quintar's mechanical appendages clicked rapidly against his supports. Explain that statement, Doctor. Every interaction I've had with the humans demonstrates tactical thinking that goes beyond normal caution. They answer questions in ways that provide information, while revealing nothing about their true capabilities. They've been cooperative, friendly, even helpful. Yet I have the distinct impression that they're managing the entire situation. I activated another display showing behavioral analysis charts. Watch Captain Chen's eye movements during questioning. She tracks every security camera, every potential exit, every piece of equipment in the room. She does this unconsciously, as if constant threat assessment is an automatic behavior. All of them do it. The recordings played showing the humans during various interactions. Even when relaxed and seemingly focused on conversation, their eyes constantly scanned their environment. Dr. Webb had somehow memorized the location of every medical instrument in the examination room within minutes of entering. Lieutenant Torres, their engineer, had casually identified 12 different ways to disable the quarantine chamber's security systems during a routine facility tour. Furthermore, I continued, their questions reveal extensive knowledge of galactic politics and military capabilities that they shouldn't possess. Captain Chen asked about Council fleet response times. Dr. Webb inquired about our biological warfare protocols. They're not just gathering information for scientific curiosity, they're conducting intelligence assessment. Representative Vashti, whose insectoid species had recently joined the Council, spoke up in rapid clicks that the translators rendered as, "You believe they are military reconnaissance?" Quote, "I believe they are military personnel conducting what their species would call a scouting mission. Everything about their behavior, their equipment, their level of preparedness suggests this was not an accidental encounter." The silence that followed my statement was broken only by the hum of life support systems. Finally, Speaker Theron asked the question everyone was thinking. "What do you recommend?" Before I could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Commander Vexoth's 3 eyes widened as data streamed across his personal display. Long-range sensors are detecting multiple contacts, approaching from the direction of human space. Estimated arrival in 18 hours. "How many ships?" Quintar demanded. 7. "No, 8 contacts. Configuration unknown, but they're traveling at velocities that exceed our fastest military vessels." Captain Chen's prediction had been accurate to within hours. The human search and rescue mission was arriving ahead of schedule, and they were coming in force. Speaker Theron's crystalline form shifted through several color frequencies, before settling on a deep purple that indicated emergency decision-making mode. "Commander, what are our defensive capabilities? The station has minimal armament. We have 2 patrol corvettes docked, but they're hardly military grade. The nearest Council fleet units are 4 days away at maximum burn." "Dr. Kethara," the speaker addressed me directly. "You've had the most contact with these humans. How should we proceed?" I felt the weight of potential galactic conflict settling on my shoulders. Everything I said in the next few minutes could determine whether this first contact led to peaceful relations or interstellar war. "Honored Speaker, I recommend we invite Captain Chen to participate in this conversation." The suggestion caused another eruption of concerned communication among the representatives. Representative Quintar was the first to voice objection. "Absolutely not. We cannot reveal military capabilities or Council procedures to potential enemies. With respect, Representative, I believe they already know our capabilities better than we know theirs. Captain Chen has been politely gathering intelligence for 3 days while we've been struggling to understand basic facts about their civilization." I activated my recording device and played back selected conversations. Listen to how she phrases her questions. "What kind of response time can your patrol vessels achieve? How many species contribute to Council defense forces? Are there standardized communication protocols for military emergencies?" She's not making casual conversation. She's building a complete tactical picture. Commander Vexoth nodded grimly. "The doctor is right. My security chief mentioned that the humans seem to know the layout of the station better than some of our own crew members. They've been mapping everything." Speaker Theron's form cycled through several colors before settling on decision amber. "Very well. Bring Captain Chen to the conference chamber, but maintain full security protocols. 20 minutes later, Captain Chen entered the chamber, escorted by 4 Growland security guards. She wore the same damaged uniform she had arrived in, but somehow managed to project an air of calm authority that made the guards look nervous, despite their size advantage. She surveyed the assembled council representatives with those predatory eyes, and I watched as she quickly categorized each species and their likely military capabilities. Her gaze lingered on Representative Quintar's mechanical enhancements and the energy weapon scarring on Representative Vashti's carapace. "Honored representatives," she said, offering what I now recognized as a diplomatic smile. "I understand you have concerns about the approaching Earth vessels." "Honored Captain Chen," Speaker Theron began, "we wish to avoid any misunderstandings that might lead to conflict. Can you tell us the intentions of the approaching ships?" "Of course. Fleet Command has dispatched Search and Rescue Group 7 to locate and recover the Aurora's crew. Standard operating procedure when one of our vessels fails to report in. The group consists of 2 escort frigates, 3 support vessels, 1 medical ship, and 2 rapid response craft." The casual way she listed 8 military vessels made my exoskeleton crawl. This was their standard search and rescue deployment. Representative Quintar leaned forward aggressively. "Those sound like military designations, Captain." "They are," Captain Chen replied without hesitation. "Space is dangerous, Representative. Our rescue operations are conducted by military personnel using military vessels because civilian ships lack the capabilities needed for deep space emergencies." End quote. "And if these military vessels encounter what they perceive as a hostile situation?" Speaker Theron asked. Captain Chen's expression became more serious. "That would depend on the specific circumstances. Earth's military follows strict rules of engagement, but the safety of Earth personnel is always the primary priority." I realized she was delivering a diplomatic threat wrapped in reasonable language. The approaching human ships would protect their people, regardless of council concerns. "Captain," I interjected, "what would constitute a hostile situation in their assessment?" "Any indication that Earth personnel are being held against their will, subjected to harmful experimentation, or threatened with violence. Evidence of hostile intent toward Earth vessels or personnel would also trigger defensive protocols." Representative Quintar's mechanical supports whirred angrily. "Are you threatening the Galactic Council?" Captain Chen's smile didn't waver, but something changed in her eyes that made the temperature in the room seem to drop. "Representative, I'm explaining our standard procedures to help avoid misunderstandings. Earth's policy is to establish peaceful relations with all species whenever possible. However, we've learned that clarity about intentions helps prevent unfortunate incidents." The way she said, "unfortunate incidents," made it clear that such events would be unfortunate primarily for whoever opposed them. Speaker Theron's form shifted to a calmer blue. "What do you propose, Captain?" "Simple. Treat this as the diplomatic first contact it was always meant to be. My crew and I will gladly participate in standard assessment procedures. In return, we'd like to begin formal diplomatic discussions about establishing relations between Earth and the Galactic Council. And the approaching military vessels? We'll maintain a respectful distance while diplomatic talks proceed. They're equipped for rescue operations, not planetary bombardment, though I should mention that if negotiations take longer than expected, additional ships may arrive. Our government takes the welfare of its citizens seriously." I watched the council representatives exchange glances and communications. They were beginning to understand what I had realized days ago. This wasn't a first contact situation where a primitive species needed guidance from their galactic neighbors. This was a meeting between equals, or possibly between the council and a civilization that had already surpassed them in ways they were only beginning to comprehend. The humans hadn't stumbled into council space by accident. They had been exploring, mapping, and preparing for this moment for decades. Captain Chen and her crew weren't survivors of a crash. They were the opening move in a carefully planned diplomatic initiative, and we had just realized that we might not be the major power in this region of the galaxy after all. My first meeting with a human, left me, both terrified and amazed. The human fleet arrived exactly when Captain Chen predicted, emerging from faster-than-light travel in a formation that made every military expert on the station recalculate their assumptions about human technology. Instead of the chaotic exit signatures most species produced when dropping out of FTL, the 8 ships materialized in perfect geometric alignment, their engines cycling down in synchronized precision that spoke to computational capabilities beyond anything in our databases. Commander Vexoth stood beside me in the station's observation deck, his 3 eyes tracking the approaching vessels through the reinforced transparency. "Doctor, those ships just executed a formation drop that our best pilots couldn't manage with months of practice." I watched the lead vessel through magnification scanners, noting details that made my professional curiosity war with growing dread. The ship's hull appeared to be composed of some kind of adaptive material that shifted its surface texture as we observed. What had initially looked like smooth metal was revealing complex geometric patterns that seemed designed to deflect sensor scans. "Commander, are we getting clear readings on their weapons systems?" "That's the problem," he replied, manipulating his scanner controls. "We're not detecting any weapons at all. Either they're using stealth technology beyond our ability to penetrate, or those ships are armed with systems we don't recognize as weapons." Through the communication system, Captain Chen's voice reached us from the conference chamber, where she continued diplomatic discussions with the Council representatives. "Search and Rescue Group 7. This is Captain Chen aboard Galactic Council Station ZK-7745. Aurora crew is safe and well. Request permission to begin standard diplomatic protocols." The response came immediately. The transmission quality so clear, it seemed as if the speaker was in the next room rather than thousands of kilometers away in space. "Confirmed, Captain Chen. This is Commodore Jackson aboard UES Determination. We're pleased to hear you're safe. Stand by for diplomatic contact with local authorities." What followed was a masterpiece of interstellar diplomacy that left every council representative scrambling to keep up. Within 30 minutes, Commodore Jackson had established formal communication protocols with Speaker Theron, exchanged diplomatic credentials that apparently existed in multiple galactic languages, including several the Council had never encountered, and proposed a preliminary framework for ongoing relations that addressed legal, military, and trade concerns with stunning sophistication. I found myself taking notes frantically, as concepts I had never considered were discussed as routine matters of interstellar relations. The humans had protocols for everything: technology transfer agreements, territorial boundary recognition, mutual defense considerations, cultural exchange programs, and something called non-interference accords that apparently governed how advanced civilizations should interact with developing species. Speaker Theron, Commodore Jackson's voice carried undertones of respectful authority. "Earth recognizes the Galactic Council's sovereignty in this region and wishes to establish formal diplomatic relations. We propose beginning with a limited cultural and scientific exchange while our respective governments develop comprehensive treaties." Representative Quintar, who had been growing more agitated throughout the conversation, finally interrupted. "Commodore, your government speaks of treaties and sovereignty as if you represent a major galactic power. You've admitted your species has only been spacefaring for 2 centuries. There was a pause that somehow managed to convey volumes about the Commodore's patience with ignorant questions. Representative Quintar, Earth represents the Terra Alliance, which includes 17 species across 43 star systems. Our combined population exceeds 200 billion sentient beings, with industrial capabilities spanning multiple sectors of this galactic arm. While humanity may be relatively new to space travel, the Alliance has been active in interstellar affairs for considerably longer." The conference chamber fell silent. Through the view screen, I could see Speaker Theron's crystalline form cycling through colors I had never seen before, indicating emotional states that apparently had no precedent in Altarian experience. 17 species? Representative Vashti's translator conveyed undertones of disbelief. "You represent multiple allied civilizations?" The Alliance began with first contact between humanity and the Centaurian Republic, approximately 150 Earth years ago. Since then, we've established mutual cooperation agreements with 15 additional species. The Andromedans Captain Chen mentioned were actually the 3rd civilization to join the Alliance. Commander Vexoth's scanning equipment suddenly began displaying readings that made his scales shift to alarm patterns. "Doctor, I'm detecting massive energy signatures from the human fleet. They're powering up systems that aren't showing up as weapons, but the energy output is equivalent to a battleship's main guns. Before I could respond, Captain Chen's voice came through the intercom with casual confidence. Commodore, the station personnel seem concerned about Determination's main deflector array. Perhaps you should explain Alliance shield technology. Of course, Captain. Station Commander Vex Oth. What you're detecting is our standard defensive screen generator. Alliance vessels don't rely on hull armor for protection. Instead, we project energy barriers that can deflect most forms of directed energy attacks. The system requires significant power, but it's considerably more effective than traditional defensive approaches. I realized my hands were shaking as I processed the implications. The humans hadn't just arrived with advanced ships. They had arrived with defensive technology that made them effectively immune to anything in the Council's military arsenal, and they were explaining it as casually as describing life support systems. Furthermore, Commodore Jackson continued, I should mention that the Determination is equipped with Alliance standard diplomatic facilities. If the Council is interested, we'd be happy to host representatives aboard our vessel for more detailed discussions. Our cultural specialists are eager to learn about your civilizations. The offer was generous, reasonable, and absolutely terrifying. They were inviting Council representatives aboard ships with technology decades ahead of anything we possessed. Operated by people who apparently viewed interstellar diplomacy as a routine administrative function. Speaker Theron's form stabilized into a deep blue that indicated careful consideration. Commodore Jackson, the Council appreciates your offer. However, our protocols require extensive security assessments before officials can visit unknown vessels. Understood completely. Dr. Webb has prepared comprehensive safety briefings covering everything from atmospheric composition to emergency procedures. We're also happy to provide detailed technical specifications for any systems that might concern your security personnel. Representative Quintar's mechanical supports were clicking rapidly with agitation. You're willing to share technical specifications with potential enemies? The pause that followed suggested the Commodore was choosing his words carefully. Representative, the Alliance doesn't consider the Galactic Council an enemy. We consider you neighbors we haven't met yet. Our standard first contact procedures assume peaceful intentions unless proven otherwise. And if proven otherwise? Quintar pressed. Then we adapt accordingly. The simple statement carried implications that made my exoskeleton tingle with fear. Captain Chen's voice interrupted the growing tension. Perhaps we should focus on immediate practical matters. My crew has been in quarantine for several days, and I'm sure the station personnel have other duties. Dr. Webb can provide detailed medical clearance data that should satisfy quarantine requirements. She was taking control of the conversation again, gently steering it away from potentially dangerous topics and toward manageable administrative details. I was beginning to understand that this was how humans operated. They didn't conquer through force or intimidation. They simply took charge of situations so smoothly that everyone else forgot they had been making the decisions. Over the next few hours, I watched a masterclass in diplomatic manipulation as Captain Chen and Commodore Jackson systematically addressed every council concern, while gathering enormous amounts of information about our military capabilities, political structure, and technological limitations. They did it through helpful questions, generous offers of assistance, and friendly curiosity about our various species and cultures. By the time the session ended, the Council had agreed to a preliminary diplomatic framework that gave the humans everything they wanted, while leaving the Council feeling like they had negotiated a favorable agreement. Captain Chen and her crew would be released from quarantine immediately. The human fleet would establish a temporary diplomatic station just outside Council territory. Exchange programs would begin with scientific and cultural personnel from both sides. Most importantly, from the human perspective, they now had official recognition as a legitimate governmental entity with rights and territories that the Council agreed to respect. As the representatives disconnected from the conference, I found myself alone with Captain Chen in the observation deck. Through the transparency, we could see the human fleet maintaining perfect formation, while construction drones from the largest vessel began assembling what appeared to be a modular space station. They brought a prefabricated diplomatic facility, I said, more to myself than to her. Captain Chen joined me at the window, her predatory eyes tracking the construction activities with obvious satisfaction. Standard procedure for establishing relations with new civilizations. The station will serve as neutral ground for ongoing negotiations, while our respective governments work out the details of formal treaties. You planned all of this. She turned to look at me with that unsettling smile. Doctor. Humanity spent 2 centuries learning hard lessons about space travel and alien contact. We've been attacked by hostile species, betrayed by allies we trusted, and manipulated by civilizations that saw us as primitive. We learned to be prepared for anything. The crash, the quarantine, all of it was deliberate. The crash was real enough, though our ships are designed to be survivable under extreme conditions. The Aurora's crew compartment is equipped with emergency stasis systems that kept us safe during atmospheric entry. We could have activated our emergency beacons immediately and been rescued within hours. I felt my legs go weak as the full scope of human deception became clear. But you didn't. We didn't, she confirmed. Because this was an opportunity to learn about the Galactic Council before revealing our true capabilities. Everything we've observed over the past few days has been transmitted back to Alliance intelligence. By now, our diplomats know more about your military strength, political divisions, and technological capabilities than some of your own member species. We welcomed you as refugees, and we're grateful for that. Your people showed us kindness and followed proper humanitarian protocols. That information has been noted favorably in our diplomatic assessments. I turned to stare at her. This human, who had spent days playing the role of grateful survivor while conducting the most sophisticated intelligence operation I had ever witnessed. What happens now? 1. Captain Chen's expression became more serious as she considered her answer. That depends largely on the Council's choices over the next few months. The Alliance is willing to establish mutually beneficial relations with any civilization that respects our sovereignty and treats our people fairly. And if we don't, then we adapt accordingly, she repeated Commodore Jackson's earlier phrase. Doctor, humanity survived on a world that spent millions of years trying to kill us. We've fought wars against species with technology centuries ahead of our own, and won through adaptation, determination, and strategic thinking. We prefer peace, but we're very good at alternatives. Through the observation window, I watched human construction drones complete their modular station in less time than it took most species to unpack their equipment. The structure was elegant, functional, and unmistakably designed for both diplomacy and defense. Dr. Kethara, Captain Chen said quietly, may I give you some advice? I nodded, not trusting my voice. Your people, the Council, all the species I've met here. You're good people trying to maintain peace and order in a dangerous galaxy. That's admirable, but you've been thinking too small. What do you mean? The galaxy is vast, and you've only explored a tiny fraction of it. There are civilizations out here with technology and capabilities that make the Alliance look primitive. Some of them are friendly, many are not. The Council's current military and diplomatic capabilities wouldn't survive first contact with some of the things we've encountered in the deep dark. She gestured toward the human fleet, where I could now see additional ships arriving from the direction of Alliance space. Humanity learned to survive by thinking like prey that refused to accept its position in the food chain. We got stronger, faster, smarter, and more dangerous, until we became something else entirely. Are you threatening us? I'm offering you an opportunity. Her smile returned, but this time it seemed less predatory and more genuine. The Alliance is always interested in expanding our mutual cooperation agreements. Your species bring capabilities and perspectives we value. In return, we can offer protection, technology, and access to opportunities you can't even imagine yet. I looked out at the human fleet, at the diplomatic station that had appeared from nowhere, at technology that casually exceeded our best efforts, and realized that my first assessment had been completely wrong. I hadn't been terrified because humans were monsters. I had been terrified because they were everything we aspired to be, and they had achieved it so efficiently that it made our centuries of struggle look like fumbling in the dark. They weren't conquerors or threats. They were teachers, offering lessons we weren't sure we were ready to learn. But as I watched their ships move through space with predatory grace, I realized we might not have a choice about whether we were ready. The humans had arrived, and nothing would ever be the same again.